Hello, I'm Brandon Falk, and welcome to my magical presentation on the leadership of definitely real leader, Professor Albus Percival Wulfric Brian Dumbledore, headmaster of Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry and leader of the Order of the Phoenix. While now may seem a good time to discuss Dumbledore's background, it will be discussed later in the presentation because his intentional obscuration of his past exemplifies our course's topic of impression management. My admiration for his tireless dedication to doing what is right and his philosophies on love, life, and empathy have been a beacon of inspiration for me and a fantastic example of a great leader. This is why I've decided to present on his life through leadership. For the purposes of this presentation and the sake of time, I'll be focusing on the leadership of his final years during Harry Potter's lifetime. Dumbledore's personality traits played a large role in his leadership abilities and competencies. Although he may not have appeared so, Dumbledore had a high energy level he utilized when needed. An example of this is when he battled Lord Voldemort at the Ministry of Magic, which will be shown in a video on an upcoming slide. This video also demonstrates examples of his high stress tolerance since he did not flee or fold under pressure during the battle like Voldemort did, his emotional stability since he kept his cool during the battle, and skills which I will discuss right after I finish up coverage on his traits. He also possessed a great deal of personal integrity by doing what was right even when he knew it could and eventually would cost him his own life. More on that later. Dumbledore also had a socialized power motivation because he didn't seek power for himself. He sought power to help others. In fact, he possessed all three of the Deathly Hallows at different times, which could have made him the Master of Death and would have allowed him to rule the world if he pleased. But he didn't choose to do that. One of the three Deathly Hallows, the Elder Wand, is pictured on this slide. His self-confidence was also high as he made life-threatening decisions such as navigating traps to hunt Horcruxes, which are pieces of Voldemort's soul trapped inside an object or living being that would render him mortal once all pieces were destroyed. Lastly, he had an internal locus of control. When Harry feared that he would turn out like Voldemort, Dumbledore told Harry, "It is not our abilities that show us what we truly are, it is our choices." This is a great example of Dumbledore's belief that we are molded by our choices and not by luck. As I mentioned earlier, Dumbledore possessed a set of leadership skills that are also exemplified in my next slide's video. The first set of skills he possessed were technical skills. As a lifelong scholar with a vast knowledge of all aspects of magic, he was highly skilled in practicing magic and dueling. Secondly, he possessed conceptual skills that allowed him to be fantastically creative in using magic for things from everyday practical applications to being creative in battling Lord Voldemort. The third set of skills Dumbledore possessed were interpersonal skills. He understood behaviors, feelings, attitudes, and motivations of those around him, and used this knowledge to achieve goals necessary to aid in the fight to vanquish Lord Voldemort. He used his interpersonal skills to talk Professor Horace Slughorn into coming out of retirement to teach at Hogwarts. This would allow Harry to become close with Professor Slughorn and learn vital information from Slughorn that would help defeat Voldemort. He even used his interpersonal skills to talk Professor Snape into killing him to solidify Voldemort's trust in Snape, even though Snape was secretly working for the Order of the Phoenix in the effort to defeat Voldemort. As we review the video of Dumbledore battling Voldemort, let's remember his high energy level, stress tolerance, emotional stability, technical skills at dueling, and his conceptual skills in how he was creative in fighting Voldemort.
You're traveling with somebody with autism.
You have to understand the triggers.
Braden was 8 years old when we were able to.
It was foolish of you to come here tonight, Tom. The orders are on their way.
By which time I shall be gone.
And you.
I'll be dead.
Dumbledore exhibited task-oriented behaviors by assembling the Order of the Phoenix and devising a plan to defeat Voldemort. He exhibited relations-oriented behavior by mentoring Harry through the years and ensuring Harry's skills were honed so that he could fight Voldemort. Dumbledore laid out the path to the goal of defeating Voldemort by hunting Horcruxes and then destroying them to eventually make Voldemort fully mortal again. He then entrusted Harry with finishing the job since he knew he wouldn't be alive long enough to do so himself. Pictured on this slide is Dumbledore completing a task that he thinks will yield a Horcrux. When it came to decision making, Dumbledore made autocratic decisions when he chose to hunt Horcruxes on his own and ended up getting fatally cursed in the process. See the slide photo showing the curse beginning to spread. He also made the autocratic decision to sacrifice his own life in the fight against Voldemort. He even delegated when allowing the Order of the Phoenix to make decisions when he wasn't present, and again when he tasked Harry with finding and destroying the remaining Horcruxes. When Dumbledore decided to sacrifice his own life in the effort to defeat Voldemort, he used aspects of participative leadership. He evaluated how important the decision was and how impactful it would be. As discussed earlier, Snape winning Voldemort's trust by carrying out this task would be immensely impactful, so Dumbledore made the decision to do it. He also had to take into consideration Snape's likelihood of participating before asking him to do it. Dumbledore wielded multiple types of power. As the appointed headmaster of Hogwarts, Dumbledore held legitimate power. In this position, he also held reward power and even exercised this power when he declared all course exams canceled as a treat for the students. Since he was admired by many, he also held referent power. Witches and wizards did favors for him thanks to his referent power. Snape agreeing to kill Dumbledore at his request, and Moody agreeing to teach defense against the dark arts were favors committed out of reverence for Dumbledore. Dumbledore also wielded expert power thanks to his unmatched skills in magic and magical knowledge. An example of his magical power and skills can be seen in this video clip of Harry getting into trouble and Dumbledore saving him during their hunt for Horcruxes. Of course, knowing that the Horcruxes exist and can be destroyed to defeat Voldemort is information power. In this clip, Dumbledore used rational persuasion to turn Snape's resistance into compliance in the matter of killing Dumbledore, and Dumbledore exercised a two-word personal appeal to Snape to carry through with the task.
You're traveling with somebody with autism.
You have to understand the triggers.
Braden was 8 years old when we were able to last.
Uh, Thanks. Avada Kedavra.
Dumbledore was a positive, charismatic leader who appealed to the values of love, trust, and peace. He was also an optimistic and confident leader who was no stranger to self-sacrifice. One instance of self-sacrifice he made for the greater good was when he lied to the Ministry of Magic by stating that he was responsible for the creation of Dumbledore's army, a secret group that was actually created and ran by Harry, Ron, and Hermione to teach defensive magic for protection against Voldemort and his Death Eaters. Dumbledore knew that agreeing to saying that he did this could land him in Azkaban. Dumbledore earned an increased commitment from followers via personal identification by serving as a benevolent role model. He also achieved this through internalization, fueled motivation, especially after sacrificing his own life. As promised earlier, impression management is something that Dumbledore also utilized as he was a kind and wise leader who was willing to help those who deserve it. There is still more to come on his impression management a bit later. High intelligence, extroversion, conscientiousness, and emotional stability, even in crisis situations, such as battling Voldemort, are all characteristics of a charismatic leader. And these were all, of course, traits that Dumbledore possessed. Since Dumbledore had a socialized power orientation, he was a positive, charismatic leader. His leadership in the Order of the Phoenix both times was born out of the crisis situation created by Voldemort, and then again the second time in Voldemort's return, and his wish to rule over everyone and eradicate all witches and wizards who had any non-magical heritage. Pictured here is a photo of the first iteration of the Order of the Phoenix. Dumbledore was a master of impression management. Harry and many others didn't even know that Dumbledore had a sister who died, a brother who was still alive, nor a father who was sent to Azkaban prison for attacking three muggles, non-magical folk. Dumbledore kept his past very close to his chest, and a lot of this information became printed public knowledge in a book that was published after his death. He also demonstrated exemplification every time he used magic and made choices such as risking his own life on several occasions for the greater good. He certainly led by example. In his dyadic relationship with Harry, Dumbledore took an active interest in Harry's life and mentored him throughout his years at Hogwarts, which exemplified his use of integration. The Ministry of Magic's official stance was that Voldemort hadn't returned, and that Dumbledore used Lewin's force field model in this scenario. Dumbledore unfroze by trying to convince the Minister of Magic, Cornelius Fudge, that Voldemort had indeed returned to get the Ministry on board in the fight against Voldemort. Dumbledore told Fudge, "Cornelius, I implore you to see reason. The evidence the Dark Lord has returned is incontrovertible." Dumbledore's changing phase involved the planning to stop Voldemort. Unfortunately, Dumbledore wasn't alive for the refreezing phase that occurred once Harry defeated Voldemort. While Dumbledore exhibited charismatic leadership traits, he also exhibited a key trait of servant leadership, which is standing up for what's right, even though he stood to lose a great deal personally, even his own life. This is altruism. He also believed in personal growth and mentored Harry's growth. Dumbledore also believed in fairness and justice. He even defended Harry at a Ministry of Magic trial. Lastly, Dumbledore promoted ethical behavior. One of my favorite Dumbledore quotes that he tells Harry illustrates this. "Dark and difficult times lie ahead. Soon we must all face the choice between what is right and what is easy." Dumbledore's steadfast belief in doing what was right inspired many around him to be the best version of themselves and do what is right. Couple this with his successful plan to stop the biggest threat to both the wizarding and muggle worlds, demonstrate that he was not only an effective leader, but one who will be revered and remembered. Let's raise our wands to perhaps the greatest wizard to ever live, Albus Dumbledore. I'll end my presentation by leaving you with a quote from Dumbledore himself. "Do not pity the dead, Harry. Pity the living, and above all, those who live without love."